What's going on, y'all? This is Senator Saint with Crime Facts Podcast. This might be a little bit of a long video, but I want to kind of send a message out to the kids. And y'all, this is not to glorify anything that I have done in my past. And I know a lot of y'all kids will be like, oh, he's a white boy. He don't know what he's talking about, right? But check this out real quick, right? I grew up in a broken home, man. My father raised me, okay? And he did the best he could at 16 years old, and he was at work all the time, so I was always at my grandparents. Now, me being at my grandparents all the time, you know how grandparents are, they let you do kind of what you want to do, right? And I end up doing what I want to do. There is no coming home when the lights come on. There is no coming home when they call you in for dinner. I didn't have to show up. It was a free for all for me. There was no getting grounded and everything that the stereotypical white boy gets talked about, right? Now, I started probably when I was around 12 years old. 12 years old was when I literally told myself, F it. I ended up getting in trouble. Because I was stealing. I was stealing something out of a big convenience store. We had a store around our area called Stars. And my pops flipped on me. I'm talking about he went off on me. And I left the house. I ran out the house. I'm upset. And I'm like, F it. That's when everything changed for me. Because up until then, I would be waiting on Sundays, because that's when my mother was supposed to be picking me up. I'd be waiting on Sundays, and I'd be sitting on the porch with all my stuff packed, ready to go. And she would never show up. She would call 5 minutes beforehand and say that she couldn't make it. So a lot of Sundays would be some sad Sundays for me. And once I hit that age and I said F everything, I started out with just smoking cigarettes. Now, I don't smoke cigarettes no more. I vape, but I don't smoke cigarettes no more. And things really started to take a downturn. I was just doing little stupid stuff, stealing little stuff out of a store, getting in trouble with my friends, putting tacks in the road, popping tires, it costing my father aggravation, really. But I got a couple slaps on my wrist until I hit probably about 14, 15 years old, and they started putting me in the county jail, and I had to start dealing with sitting there until they sentenced me and figured out what they were gonna do with me. The first time I got brought up the way was around 17 years old. That's when I went to NYI. Now, I grew up around drugs and guns all my life. I seen it. There were times that my father was a coke dealer, and he was a big coke dealer around our area, and he hung out with a lot of biker gangs, and that's where he made his money at, was through the biker clubs. And he started utilizing that stuff as well, and it got to the point where he got so paranoid one day that I walked in the room, and I was real young. This is way before I was 12. I walked in the room and he pulled out a 357 on me, and that was the day he stopped. He stopped using. And this has been things that have happened in my life, and I've had to deal with it. When my father and mother were together, my mother walked in with with me sitting on my father's lap, and my father teaching me how to roll a joint. Now, mind you, they're young. I'm their first kid. They're just learning how to parent. And I don't blame my father or my mother for anything. I wish I had more time on my mother before she had passed, but I didn't get that time. When we first started finally getting a relationship, she ended up passing away on me. And things were just not good in my life because I felt they weren't good, right? I could have probably made them better, but I chose to go to the streets to look for the love. And all I found was gangs and people who were getting in trouble. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you're a white boy joining a black gang. That's what I grew up around, because my white boy friends were in a certain town, and I would go to the cities to hang out with all my black friends or my Spanish friends. And it would become an everyday thing where I would literally be out in the hood. That's why when I go places, and it don't matter where it is. I don't care where it is. I'm not. It doesn't make one difference to me where I am. I'm not afraid. I'm more afraid that something might happen to my wife or my kids if I bring them out into a bad area or we have to go through a bad area. But me, I'm never worried. I've had guns pulled out on me about 4 different times. I was shot once. And I've made it through all of that. I've made it through an addiction from heroin that I had starting at 16. And I made it through a pill addiction for benzos. I made it through a cocaine addiction. And I'm doing everything that I need to do better. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I miss that life because it's exciting. And you hear these rappers and this music talking about it all the time, and some of them are living it. But I'm trying to tell you it's not worth it. No matter how much pain you're going through, none of it is worth it. It literally took my entire life away from me making the decisions that I made. It made me the man I am today and the person I am today, because I am a good person. I know I am. I'll go out of my way for anybody, and I've always been like that. And that's probably one of the biggest problems I had growing up was loyalty. My loyalty, I believed in so much that I would put that loyalty over people that were that really didn't deserve my loyalty. And now I'm in the process of healing, and I had so much pain and paranoia in me that I remember, my houses, every one of my apartments or houses, 19 CCTV cameras with audio. I knew when you were at my house. I knew when you were coming up the road. I knew, if you were trying to sneak through the back. That's how bad it got for me. And this was after doing 5 years. And then I jumped back into the drug game. And that's when I put my wife through a lot. I put my wife through a lot. I to the point where, I'm in the kitchen cooking up, rock. And I got multiple people in and out of that house. And it got so bad that I started seeing people walking up and down the street that I didn't even know. And they look like normal people, right? And they be walking a dog. But I already knew what it was. I knew that they were watching me. I knew that the feds were watching me at that time. And that was for drugs. Now, I ended up finally leaving. My wife pushed the hell out of me to get out of Connecticut and went down to South Carolina. And this is a lot of fast forwarding. Mind you, this is a lot of fast forwarding. A lot went on throughout this time because during my drug addiction, I was very, very suicidal. There was one point, and I don't mean to be jumping around, but there was one point my father had pulled up on me because he knew I was on the corner. I was just sitting in a pair of shorts. I had no shoes on, no shirt on, and I'm sitting there. I'm literally removing blood out of my arms and spraying it all over me. So when he pulled up, all he seen was me covered in blood. Now, I took pride when I was younger in people thinking or knowing that I was nuts. That was a label I had. And I tried to live up to that to the fullest. Everything that I've done in my life, I have literally done to the fullest. If it was drugs, I didn't just sniff or eat. I went right, let's go, let's shoot that, right? And it took a lot for me to get over the drug addiction, the pain that I felt from growing up, not feeling the love that I should have felt as a kid. And there's a lot to my story that I don't care what culture you from. I know that you've been through the same type of stuff. I know that you've seen your parents either selling or doing drugs. I know you've sat there and went through some sort of paranoia or pain in your daily lives. And this is as kids, we're dealing with this. When we should be climbing trees and running around with our friends or doing some old stupid stuff. And we're living a grown man life and thinking we know everything. And I knew nothing. I knew nothing about life. And this was really hard for me, man, trying to deal with all of this. Because I felt like my mother, she didn't love me. She told me one time that I remember she sent me, I thought we was going, it was summertime, right? And we was going to her beach house. My mom had money. So when I got to go see my mom, it was all love. I loved it going over there. But I thought I was going to the beach house with the rest of the family. No, she sent me to a bad kids camp. So I go to this bad kids camp, and now I'm small. I was a small kid, bro. I was a small kid. I was not ripped. I had no muscle on me. I was short, so I was an easy target. And there was this white boy there, and every time he seen me, he would pick on me. So finally I said to him, I said, yo, like, why do you keep constantly doing that, right? Like, why are you picking on me? And he says to me, he said, because you remind me of me when I was your age. And I'm thinking, bro, we the same age. You just a bully, bro. So I said, all right, whatever. And I left it at that, right? And I did my thing. So I ended up doing my thing. They had little classes there. We did this class where you make them little rockets or whatever, and they shoot up in the air. So we're making these rockets, right? And I figured maybe I'll try to, make amends with this kid. And I went and I talked to this kid, and I said, hey, listen, man, I'm having a little bit of a tough time taking the top off of this spray paint can to spray the rocket, right? I said, can you help me? So he helped me. And then when he gave me the can back, he slammed it in my chest and shoulder bumped me. I had enough at this point. I said, listen, don't ever touch me again. Stop touching me. And he, does the whole, what you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do? And, he pushes me again. And I'm trying to warn him, and I'm trying to tell him, yo, stop touching me, because I'm gonna snap. And I was a snap artist, man. I was a flip mode artist real quick. And I had vicious anger problems. And all I remember, and it was like a movie, man, he did it one more time, and I flipped that can upside down so quick, so it was the edge, and I just started beating him on the bridge of his nose and on his forehead with this can. And he stumbles back, and I see him walking back towards me. I'm like, bro, this kid's a robot. What is going on with this kid? Like, how did he just make it through 5 whacks, 6 whacks, right on the bridge of his nose? So he's walking towards me. I walk backward. I fall. I'm like, oh shit. So I get up real quick. I took that can and I launched it at him. And because there was still spray paint in it, the way I launched it at him, it went straight at him like a rocket. And now, mind you, when I was younger, I used to be a pitcher for baseball, and I was a very good pitcher. And I launched this thing. I did a whole pitching stance when I threw this can of paint, and it cranked this kid right between the eyes, man. And he just froze up. And when he froze up, he dropped back. And he didn't get back up after that. Now, the police were called, the ambulance was called, my mom was called. Now, my mom, I'm sitting there flipping out, like, I want to talk to my mother, and they would not let me talk to her to explain my situation. Like, bro, I was getting picked on for months. Like, you left me here, and I'm getting picked on. Like, you expect me not to defend myself? So, as we're in the car and we're driving home, she said, this is why I don't want you around, because I don't know what you're capable of. I don't know if you're gonna stab me and your sisters while we're sleeping. Now, nobody knows about this, right? My father knew about it. My wife knows about it, but nobody else knew about this. This was something that I just kept and I held in for a long time. But I feel like my story kind of needs to be told. And my dad wasn't mad at me. My dad understood. You know what I'm saying? He's a man, so he understands the fact of having to protect yourself. I was also told, by my mother that I reminded her of my father. So that was rough on her. And people don't understand what that does to kids, man. Because you're telling kids this stuff, and then years later, I find out them Sundays that she didn't show up, they were actually having family gatherings. She just didn't want me there, or she just didn't want to pick me up, whatever the case may be. But that's what it was. And I think I ended up having a lot of my problems and hatred towards people because of that, because of the unwantedness or the push away. So I turned to the streets and I turned to gangs, and I gangbanged. That's what I did. I gangbanged. And people think, oh, well, you joined the gang and a black gang. So what? So what that I joined a black gang? Those were the ones that were there for me at the time, that I thought anyway. And I did my thing. I had to put in work, and it wasn't when I went to prison, I joined a gang. No, I joined a gang when I was like 14 years old, man. And this was when the old school gangs in Connecticut were around, and they transferred over to, other larger gangs, and they incorporated into other larger gangs. So when they incorporated, we all went over. I've been to meetings. I've had to spit my lit, and everywhere I went, And it's always caused me issues. No matter what, it's always caused me issues. It wasn't until I got older that I started to see, like, damn, like, y'all are never there for me when I need y'all to have my back for something. And this was in prison is when I realized this. So I never left the gang. I just left the lifestyle, right? I felt my family was more important. So I just stopped bringing myself around. And I know that puts a target on me, especially when I'm seen. You know, I'm sure there's some people that ain't too happy with me for doing stuff like that. But I don't care, because on some real stuff, my wife, my kids, my father, my family, they all more important than any one of them. You know what I mean? And I say that to say this, that this is not the life that you want to live, man. But we're all sinners, man. We try to walk that life as a saint. We might never get there, but we strive to be. Love, peace, and respect. And I'll see y'all on the next video.